Let me tell you, nothing kills a lazy Saturday vibe faster than your mother-in-law dropping by unannounced with a list of little chores she swears only take an hour. I was sprawled on the couch, halfway through a rerun of The Bachelor, when the doorbell rang. There stood Margaret, my husband's mom, in her pastel tracksuit and tennis shoes, holding a reusable grocery bag full of cleaning supplies like it was a trophy. "Honey, the attic's been collecting dust since you two moved in," she said. Pushing past me before I could even say hello, "Thought we could tackle it together. Find some of Jake's old baseball trophies while we're at it. He'd love to show those to the kids someday." Jake, my husband of 5 years, was out golfing with his buddies. Lucky him, I sighed, paused the TV, and followed Margaret up the creaky attic stairs. The air smelled like cedar and old cardboard, sunlight streaming through the tiny dormer window and lighting up clouds of dust. She handed me a feather duster and pointed to a stack of boxes in the corner. "Start with those, I'll sort through the bins by the window." I grabbed the first box, labeled Jake's high school stuff in Margaret's neat handwriting, and pulled off the tape. Inside were old yearbooks, a football jersey with grass stains still on the shoulders, and a pile of crumpled love letters from some girl named Emily. I giggled, flipping through one where she wrote that Jake's smile made her knees weak. Teenage romance is so cheesy, right? I set the letters aside, figuring Margaret might want to keep them, and moved to the next box. This one was heavier, no label, just taped shut tight. I had to yank at the tape for a minute before it came loose. Inside was a wooden photo album, a few old board games, and a thick manila envelope at the bottom. The envelope was yellowed at the edges, sealed with red wax that had a tiny heart stamp in the middle. Curiosity got the better of me. Jake's never been big on fancy stuff like wax seals. I peeled it open carefully, not wanting to tear anything. At first, I thought it was a fake, a really good one. But still fake. It was a marriage certificate, printed on that thick, official-looking paper with the embossed seal of the state of Illinois. The date was 10 years ago, 5 years before Jake and I even met, and the names, Jacob Michael Carter and Lillian Rose Bennett, Jake's full name. Spelled perfectly, Lillian. I'd heard that name before. My hands started shaking so bad the paper slipped out of my grasp. It fluttered to the floor, and I knelt down to pick it up, my eyes glued to the signatures at the bottom. Jake's signature was the same one he used on our mortgage papers, on the birthday cards he writes me every year. Lillian's was loopy, with a little heart dotting the I. There was even a witness line signed by Margaret. My mother-in-law knew about this. "Find anything good?" Margaret called from across the attic. I stuffed the certificate back into the envelope and tucked it behind the photo album, my throat tight. "Just some old games," I said, my voice coming out higher than normal. She turned around, squinting at me. "You okay, dear? You look pale." "Fine, just dusty," I lied, grabbing the feather duster and waving it around like a maniac. Margaret raised an eyebrow but didn't push it. She went back to sorting through bins. Humming some old country song, I stood there for a minute, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Jake was married before, to a woman named Lillian. Why didn't he tell me? I've always thought Jake and I were open with each other. We talk about everything. His annoying boss, my struggle to get the kids to eat veggies, even the time he accidentally rear-ended a police car in college. He told me about his high school girlfriend Emily, about the college girl who cheated on him. But never a wife, never Lillian. I glanced at the clock on my phone. 11:30. Jake would be home around noon. I needed to get that envelope out of the attic before he got back. Before Margaret said something stupid, I stuffed it into the back pocket of my jeans, pulled my hoodie down over it, and grabbed a random baseball trophy from the box. "Hey, Margaret, look, Jake's 2010 MVP trophy," I said, holding it up with a fake smile. She clapped her hands. "Oh, that's the one. I told you we'd find it. Let's clean it up and put it on the mantel." I nodded, following her down the stairs, the envelope burning a hole in my pocket. When we got to the living room, she started polishing the trophy while I pretended to straighten up the bookshelf. My mind was racing. Do I ask him as soon as he walks in? Do I wait until the kids are in bed? What if he lies about it? What if he doesn't? The sound of the garage door opening made my stomach drop. Jake was home. I heard him laughing as he walked through the door, carrying his golf bag. "Hey, babe, hey, Mom, you guys have fun cleaning the attic." He leaned in to kiss me, but I pulled back slightly, my eyes darting to my back pocket. He frowned. "You okay? You look weird." Margaret looked up from the trophy. "She's just tired from all the dust." "Jake, we found your old MVP trophy, though." Jake's face lit up. "No way, let me see." He walked over to his mom, totally oblivious to the panic in my eyes. I stood there, frozen, the marriage certificate hidden behind my back. 10 years ago, he'd stood in front of a judge with another woman, promised to love her forever, and today, he'd kissed me goodbye like nothing ever happened. I needed answers, and fast. Margaret went on and on about how Jake cried when he got that MVP trophy, but I could barely hear her. All I could think about was Lillian's name, Lillian Rose Bennett. Where had I heard that before? It was like a song stuck in my head. Half forgotten but familiar. Jake was too busy admiring the trophy to notice my zoning out. He ran his finger over the engraving, grinning. "Man, I forgot how heavy this thing is. Remember when I told you about the championship game? The one where I broke my ankle in the third quarter but still scored the winning touchdown?" I nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah, I remembered. He told me that story on our first date, over burgers and milkshakes at that little diner downtown." Margaret left around 1. After insisting we keep the trophy on the mantle where everyone can see it, as soon as the door closed, I excused myself to the bathroom. I locked the door, pulled the manila envelope out of my back pocket, and laid the marriage certificate on the sink. The paper still felt warm, like it was burning through my fingers. 10 years ago, October 12, 2015, I was a sophomore in college back then, stressing over midterms and working part-time at a coffee shop. Jake was 23. Fresh out of grad school and working his first real job at the engineering firm. That's when it hit me. Lillian, she was the summer love Jake mentioned once. Years ago, we were lying in bed, watching the rain, and he started talking about his early 20s. He said he'd had a girlfriend right after college, someone he'd dated for a few months. She was great, he'd said, vague as always, but it just didn't work out, different paths, you know. I'd asked her name, and he'd mumbled something about it not mattering anymore. Now I realized, he'd lied, or at least, he'd left out the part where didn't work out meant they'd been married. Why would he lie about that? It's not like being married before is a crime. My sister Sarah was married twice before she met her husband Mike, and she talked about her ex-husbands all the time. But Jake, he'd never mentioned a wife, not once. I folded the certificate back up and slipped it into my makeup bag, tucking it under a tube of lipstick. No way was I leaving it out where the kids or Jake might find it. When I walked back out, Jake was in the kitchen making sandwiches. "Ham and cheese okay?" he asked, holding up a slice of bread. "Yeah, that's fine," I said. Sitting at the kitchen table, the kids were in the living room, watching cartoons. Our 7-year-old Mia was coloring, and 4-year-old Luke was stacking blocks. They were too busy to notice that something was off between us. Jake set a plate in front of me, then sat down across from me. "You really are acting weird," he said, taking a bite of his sandwich. "Did Mom say something to you? She can be a little pushy sometimes." "I know," I shook my head. "No, it's not Mom, just tired, I guess." Cleaning the attic took more out of me than I thought. He reached across the table and took my hand. His palm was warm, calloused from golf and fixing things around the house. The same hand that had signed a marriage certificate with another woman. "We should take a nap later," he said, squeezing my hand. "After the kids go down for theirs, I'll rub your shoulders." I wanted to say yes, to go back to being the normal couple we were that morning, but all I could think about was Lillian. What did she look like? Why did they get married? Why did they get divorced? And why didn't Jake tell me any of this? After lunch, the kids went down for their naps like clockwork. Jake stretched, yawning. "Come on, babe, nap time." I followed him to the bedroom, but I couldn't sleep. I lay there next to him, listening to his steady breathing, my mind racing. I started going through every conversation we'd ever had about his past, trying to find a clue I'd missed. There was the time we drove through his hometown, and he pointed out a little white house on Oak Street. A friend used to live there, he'd said. Could that have been Lillian? And the time he refused to go to the county fair, saying he had a bad experience there once, was Lillian involved? Or the time he got a phone call from an unknown number and stepped outside to take it, coming back with a weird look on his face? I'd asked who it was, and he said a telemarketer. Now I wondered if it was her. I quietly got out of bed, careful not to wake him, and went to the Home Office. I sat down at the desk, opened the laptop, and typed Lillian Rose Bennett into Google. Hundreds of results popped up, too many to sort through. I added Illinois to the search. Since the marriage certificate was from there, still too many. I tried Lillian Rose Bennett Jake Carter and got nothing. Maybe she'd changed her last name after the divorce. That made sense. I closed the laptop, frustrated. I needed more information. The marriage certificate had an address for both Jake and Lillian. Jake's was his parents' old house, which I knew about. Lillian's was an apartment building in Springfield, about an hour away from where we live now. Maybe I could drive there sometime. See if anyone knew her. But that sounded crazy, right? Stalking my husband's ex-wife. What if she was married with kids, living a normal life? I didn't want to mess that up. When I went back to the bedroom, Jake was awake, scrolling through his phone. "Where'd you go?" he asked, putting his phone down. "Just got some water," I said, climbing back into bed. He pulled me close, and I let him. His smell, pine cologne and soap, calmed me down for a second. This was my husband. The man who brought me coffee in bed every morning, who stayed up with the kids when they were sick, who cried at our wedding because he said he never thought he'd be this happy. How could he keep something this big from me? That night, after the kids were in bed, we sat on the couch watching a movie. Jake had his arm around me, and I was leaning against his chest. Halfway through the movie, he said, "You know, I was thinking about that attic today. Found anything else besides the trophy?" My heart skipped a beat. Was he asking about the certificate? Did he know I found it? "Nope," I said, keeping my voice casual. "Just old yearbooks and some board games." "Nothing exciting," he nodded, turning his attention back to the movie, but I could feel his arm tense around me, like he was holding something back. I wanted to scream, to pull the certificate out of my purse and slam it on the coffee table, but I didn't. I waited, because I needed to know more. I needed to know why he'd hidden this from me, and I needed to hear it from him, not from some old piece of paper. After the movie ended, Jake went to take a shower. I pulled the certificate out of my purse again, staring at Lillian's name. I didn't know her, but I felt like I did, like she was a ghost in our marriage, hiding in the attic, waiting to be found. And now that I'd found her, I couldn't ignore her anymore. Tomorrow, I decided, tomorrow, I'd start asking questions. And I wouldn't stop until I got the truth. I didn't sleep a wink that night. I kept replaying Jake's question about the attic over and over in my head. Was it just casual curiosity? Or did he suspect I'd found something? Every time he shifted in bed, I tensed up, half expecting him to turn on the light and demand to know what I was hiding. By the time the sun came up, my eyes felt like sandpaper, and my stomach was in knots. I got up before Jake. Tiptoeing to the bathroom to grab the marriage certificate from my makeup bag, I folded it up small and slipped it into the inner pocket of my hoodie, close enough that I could touch it if I needed to, but hidden enough that no one would see it. Then I headed to the kitchen to make coffee, the smell of freshly brewed beans usually calming me down, but today it just made my nausea worse. Jake stumbled into the kitchen around 7 a.m., his hair messy and his eyes still half closed. "Morning, babe," he mumbled. Wrapping his arms around my waist from behind, he kissed my neck, and I tried not to flinch. "Smells good. You up early?" I nodded, pouring him a cup of coffee and handing it to him. "Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd get a head start on breakfast for the kids." Mia and Luke wandered in a few minutes later, both rubbing their eyes and asking for pancakes. I got to work mixing the batter while Jake sat at the table with the kids, asking Mia about her coloring project from yesterday and listening to Luke ramble about his block tower. They looked so normal, my perfect little family, and for a second, I almost forgot about the piece of paper burning a hole in my pocket. Maybe I'd imagined it, maybe it was a fake, some prank Margaret played back in the day. But when I looked down at Jake's hands, holding Luke's tiny one as he drew a picture on a napkin, I remembered that signature, the same one that was on that certificate. No, It wasn't a prank, it was real. Breakfast was a blur of syrup-covered faces and spilled milk. After we cleaned up, Jake said he was going to mow the lawn, and the kids begged to help. I'll keep an eye on them, I said, forcing a smile. You go ahead. I watched them walk outside, Jake pushing the lawnmower, Mia following with her toy rake, Luke riding his tricycle beside them, and felt a pang in my chest. This was the life we'd built together. Why would he risk it by hiding something like this? I decided to start small, no big accusations, just a little nudge. Maybe if he thought I was just curious about his past, he'd let something slip. I grabbed a glass of lemonade and headed outside, handing it to Jake when he stopped to catch his breath. Thanks, babe, he said, taking a sip. You're the best. Mia ran over, her cheeks pink from the sun. Daddy, can we go to the park after you're done? Please. Sure, kiddo, Jake said, ruffled her hair. We can get ice cream too. Luke cheered, and Mia did a little dance. I sat down on the porch swing, watching them, and took a deep breath. Hey, Jake, I said, keeping my voice casual. Remember when we were talking about old stuff in the attic yesterday? It got me thinking. Do you still have any contact with people from right after college? Like, that girlfriend you mentioned once, the summer one? Jake froze for a second, just long enough that I noticed, then he kept mowing, his back to me. No, not really, we lost touch years ago. His voice was higher than normal. And he didn't turn around to look at me. That was a red flag. Jake always looks at me when we talk, even when we're arguing. Really, I said, leaning forward. That's too bad. You said she was great. I wonder what she's up to now. Jake stopped the lawnmower and turned around, wiping his forehead with his sleeve. I dunno. Like I said, different paths. It was a long time ago. He sounded defensive, and I could see his jaw tightening. Mia and Luke were too busy chasing a butterfly to notice the tension between us. Yeah, I guess so, I said, playing it cool. It's just weird, you know, finding old stuff can make you nostalgic. Like, do you still have any photos of her? Or, I dunno, letters, something like that. Jake's face went pale, and he looked away. No, I threw all that stuff out years ago. Didn't see the point in keeping it. I raised an eyebrow. Really? Because I found a bunch of letters from Emily in the attic yesterday. You kept those. He shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable. Emily was high school. Different. Look, babe, why are you asking all this? It's not a big deal. I stood up, walking over to him. I kept my voice soft, like I was just concerned. Not angry. I'm not trying to make a big deal out of it. I'm just curious. You never talk about that time in your life. Right after college, you were 23. Fresh out of grad school. Must have been exciting. Did you do anything crazy back then? Like, I dunno, elope or something? I held my breath, waiting for his reaction. His eyes widened, and he took a step back. Elope? What are you talking about? No, of course not. Why would you even ask that? He laughed, but it was a forced laugh. Tight and nervous. Mia ran over, tugging on his shirt. Daddy, can we go now? The butterfly got away. Jake jumped at the chance to change the subject. Sure, princess. Let's go get your shoes on. He didn't look at me as he walked inside, Mia and Luke trailing behind him. I stood there, my hands shaking. He knew, or at least, he knew I was onto something. His reaction was too strong, too defensive. If it was just a summer fling, he wouldn't have panicked like that. We went to the park, but I couldn't enjoy it. Jake was extra attentive, pushing Luke on the swing, helping Mia climb the jungle gym, buying us all ice cream, but I could tell he was distracted. Every time I looked at him, he'd smile, but his eyes were elsewhere, like he was waiting for me to drop the bomb. That night, after the kids were in bed, we made dinner together. Spaghetti, Jake's favorite. I stirred the sauce while he boiled the pasta, the kitchen quiet except for the sound of the stove. I knew this was my chance. I took a deep breath and said, Jake, we need to talk about earlier. At the park. He froze, his hand hovering over the pasta pot. What about it? You got really defensive when I asked about that girlfriend, I said, keeping my voice steady. Why? Did something happen between you two that you never told me about? I mean, I get it, everyone has secrets, but we're married, Jake, we're supposed to tell each other things. He turned off the stove and faced me, his face serious. There's nothing to tell. Okay, it was a long time ago. And it didn't work out. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to upset you. Or make you feel like you had to compete with someone from my past. It sounded plausible, almost too plausible, but I knew better. Compete, I said. Jake, I'm not worried about competing with some girl from 10 years ago. I'm worried because you're lying to me. You said you threw all her stuff away. But I found something, in the attic. His face paled, and he took a step back. What? What did you find? I reached into my hoodie pocket and pulled out the manila envelope. I didn't open it, just held it out to him. This, I said. His eyes locked on the envelope, and he didn't move. For a second, I thought he was going to deny it, to say it wasn't his, but then he sighed, running his hand through his hair. Can we sit down? He said, his voice quiet. I nodded. And we walked to the couch. He sat down, and I sat next to him, the envelope still in my hand. I was finally going to get the truth, or so I thought. We sat on the couch in silence for what felt like an hour, but was probably only 2 minutes. The living room was dark except for the lamp behind Jake, casting shadows on his face. I held the envelope out to him, my hand steady now. No more shaking, just a cold, hard need to know. He stared at it, then at me, then back at the envelope. Finally, he reached out and took it. He opened it slowly, like he was unwrapping a bomb. When he pulled out the marriage certificate, his fingers brushed over Lillian's name, and I saw a flicker of something. Regret. Sadness. Guilt. I couldn't tell. He stared at it for a long time, then set it on the coffee table between us. It's real, he said, his voice so quiet I almost didn't hear him. I know, I said. I recognized your signature. And Margaret's. His head snapped up. You saw Mom's signature. I nodded. Yeah, she was a witness. He closed his eyes. Sighing. Of course she was. She practically forced me into it. I leaned forward, my heart racing. Forced you into it. What does that mean? Jake, you don't just get forced into marriage, especially not at 23. He ran his hand through his hair, a nervous habit he'd had since we started dating. It's complicated. Mom was sick back then. Real sick. Cancer. She just finished chemo, and the doctors said her chances weren't great. She'd always wanted to see me married. To know I'd be taken care of. Lillian and I, we were dating, and Mom loved her. Like, really loved her. She kept saying how perfect we were, how she wanted to walk me down the aisle before it was too late. I blinked. That was not what I expected. So you married Lillian to make your mom happy? He nodded, looking down at his hands. Yeah, it was stupid, I know, but Mom was so weak, and she kept crying about it. Lillian said she understood, said she loved me enough to do it for Mom, so we went to the courthouse, signed the papers, and told Mom it was the real deal. She was so happy. Her health even got better for a little while. And then what? I asked. You got divorced when your mom got better. He shook his head. No. Mom got better. Yeah, she's fine now, obviously. But Lillian and I, we realized we weren't actually in love, not the kind that lasts, anyway. We were just two people who cared about each other, trying to do something nice for someone we loved. We got divorced 6 months later. It was amicable. No fights, no lawyers, just mutual. It sounded like a fairy tale, a selfless act for a sick mother, two people being mature about realizing it wasn't working. But something felt off. If it was just that, why didn't you tell me? I said. Jake, I would have understood. My grandma made my mom go on a blind date with my dad because she thought he was stable. Families do weird stuff for love. Why hide this from me for 5 years? He reached for my hand, but I pulled it away, because I was ashamed, he said, his voice breaking, ashamed that I got married for the wrong reasons, ashamed that I didn't have the courage to tell my mom no, and I was scared you'd think I was the kind of guy who makes big decisions without thinking. The kind of guy who'd marry someone just to please his mom. I didn't want you to look at me differently. My heart ached. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to, but there was a little voice in my head saying, if it's that simple, why did he panic when I mentioned eloping? Why did he lie about keeping her stuff? Why did you say you threw all her stuff away? I asked. You kept Emily's letters. He winced. Because Emily was a kid, Lillian, she was my wife, even if it was just for 6 months. Keeping her stuff felt like, I dunno, like I was holding on to something I shouldn't, So I boxed it up and put it in the attic, out of sight, out of mind. I nodded, but I still wasn't sure. Call it woman's intuition, call it paranoia, whatever it was, I needed proof, not just his word. Can I see the divorce papers? I said. He froze. Divorce papers? I nodded. Yeah, if you got divorced, there should be papers, just like the marriage certificate. He looked away, and I knew. He didn't have them, or if he did, he wasn't telling me the truth about something else. I don't have them here, he said. They're at my parents' house, in a box in the basement. I can get them next time we go over. I forced a smile. Sure, that's fine. But inside, my stomach was sinking. I'd been to his parents' house 100 times. I'd helped Margaret clean out the basement last year. There was no box of Jake's old divorce papers. I would have seen it. That night, I lay awake next to him, listening to his breathing. He'd fallen asleep quickly, like he thought telling me his truth would make everything better. But it hadn't. It had just made me more curious. If the marriage was just a 6-month favor for his mom, why didn't he have the divorce papers handy? Why did Margaret never mention it? And why did Lillian agree to it? Would I agree to marry someone just to make their mom happy? I made a decision, first thing tomorrow morning. I was going to the county clerk's office in Springfield. The marriage certificate had the county seal. Sangamon County. They kept records of marriages and divorces there. I could look it up, see if the divorce was real, see if Jake was telling the truth. I got up at 5 a.m. Before Jake and the kids woke up. I wrote a note. Went to run errands. Be back by noon. Love you. I folded it up and left it on the kitchen counter, next to Jake's coffee mug. Then I grabbed the marriage certificate, tucked it into my purse, and headed out. The drive to Springfield was an hour long, and I spent every minute going over Jake's story. It had holes, big ones, but maybe I was overreacting. Maybe the divorce papers really were at his parents' house. Maybe I was just scared of losing the life we had. The county clerk's office was a gray, boring building downtown. I walked in, my hands sweating, and went up to the front desk. A woman with glasses and a name tag that said Dolene looked up at me. Can I help you? She said. I need to look up a marriage and divorce record, I said, for Jacob Michael Carter and Lillian Rose Bennett, married October 12, 2015, in Sangamon County. Dolene nodded. ID, please. I handed her my driver's license. She typed something into her computer, then frowned. Marriage record is here, October 12, 2015, officiated by Judge Pamela Henderson, witnesses Margaret Carter and Thomas Bennett. Thomas Bennett, probably Lillian's dad. That checked out with Jake's story. What about the divorce? I asked. Dolene typed some more, then shook her head. No divorce record here. Not for Jacob Carter and Lillian Bennett, not in Sangamon County. Anyway, they could have gotten divorced in another county, or another state, but we don't have it here. My blood ran cold. No divorce record. In the county where they got married. That meant one of two things. Either they got divorced somewhere else, or they never got divorced at all. Can you check if they got married anywhere else? I said, or if Lillian changed her last name. Dolene shook her head. I can only access Sangamon County records. If you want to check statewide, you'd have to go to the Illinois Department of Public Health in Chicago, or hire a private investigator. I thanked her, my hands shaking, and walked out of the office. The sun was bright, but I felt cold all over. Jake had lied to me, not about the marriage, about the divorce. He'd never gotten divorced, or if he had, he'd done it in another state and hidden the papers. Either way, he'd kept it from me. I got in my car and sat there for a minute, staring at the marriage certificate. Jacob Michael Carter and Lillian Rose Bennett, married October 12, 2015. No divorce record in Sangamon County. I pulled out my phone and called my sister Sarah. She was a lawyer. She'd know what this meant. Hey, it's me, I said, my voice breaking. I need your help. I think Jake is still married to his ex-wife. Sarah was quiet for a second, then said, get back here, we need to talk, and bring the marriage certificate. I hung up, started the car, and headed home. Jake was going to have a lot more explaining to do. And this time, I wasn't going to let him get away with half-truths. The drive back home was a blur of tears and racing thoughts. Sarah's voice played on a loop in my head. Get back here, we need to talk, but I couldn't go straight to her. I had to face Jake first, even if just to pretend everything was normal until I had a plan. The last thing I wanted was to blow up in front of the kids, or worse, let Jake see how unraveled I was. When I pulled into the driveway, Jake's truck was still there, and I could hear Luke laughing from inside. I took a deep breath, wiped my eyes, and fixed a fake smile on my face before walking in. The living room was a mess of toy trucks and coloring pages. Jake was on the floor, building a block tower with Luke, while Mia sat on the couch reading a book. "Hey, babe," Jake called, looking up. "You're back early. Errands go okay?" "Yeah, fine," I said, setting my purse on the counter. "Just grabbed a few things from the store." Mia looked up from her book. "Did you get the glitter I asked for? I need it for my art project." I froze. Glitter? I hadn't thought about any art supplies. No, sorry, kiddo, I forgot. I'll get it tomorrow." "Okay," she pouted but nodded, going back to her book. Jake gave me a weird look, like he could tell something was off, but he didn't say anything. Thank God. I made lunch. Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, the kids' favorite, and tried to focus on their chatter instead of the marriage certificate burning a hole in my purse. Luke rambled about his block tower. Mia talked about her upcoming art show at school, and Jake chimed in with silly jokes that made them laugh. For a second, it was easy to pretend everything was fine, like I hadn't just found out my husband might still be married to another woman. After lunch, Jake took the kids to the park. "I'll wear 'em out so they nap good," he said, and I finally had a minute to breathe. I grabbed my purse, pulled out the marriage certificate, and stared at Lillian's address, 123 Oakwood Avenue, apartment 4B. Springfield. It was the same address I'd seen 100 times on the certificate, but now it felt like a lifeline. If I could find Lillian, I could ask her the truth. Did they get divorced? If so, where? If not, why? And did she even know Jake was married to me? I called Sarah again, pacing the kitchen. "He took the kids to the park," I said, my voice hushed. "I have an hour, maybe two. Lillian's old address is on the certificate. I'm gonna go check it out." Sarah sighed. "Be careful. You don't know what you're walking into. What if she's still living there? What if she has a husband? You can't just show up and start asking about her ex-marriage." "I know," I said. "I'll be subtle. Just ask the neighbors. Maybe. See if anyone remembers her. I need to know. Sarah, I can't keep living like this." Wondering if my whole marriage is a lie, Sarah was quiet for a second, then said, "Fine. But text me when you get there, and text me when you leave, and if anything weird happens, call 911. "Got it," I promised I would, hung up, and grabbed my keys. I didn't have time to waste. The drive to Springfield felt shorter this time. Probably because I was so focused on what I was going to do. Oakwood Avenue was a quiet residential street, lined with old brick apartment buildings and maple trees. 123 Oakwood was a 3-story building with a faded "for rent" sign in the window and a rusty fire escape on the side. I parked across the street, took a deep breath, and walked up to the front door. A woman was sitting on the porch, smoking a cigarette and reading a magazine. She looked to be in her 60s, with gray hair pulled back in a ponytail and a chipped nail polish. I smiled, trying to look friendly. "Excuse me," I said, "I'm looking for someone who used to live here." "Lillian Rose Bennett. She was in apartment 4B, about 10 years ago." The woman raised an eyebrow, taking a drag from her cigarette. "Lillian? Yeah, I remember her. Nice girl, quiet. Lived here with her dad for a while. Thomas, right, he was a sweet old guy, fixed my leaky faucet once." My heart raced. Thomas Bennett, the witness on the marriage certificate, that was her dad. "Do you know where she is now?" I asked, "or if she still lives in Springfield?" The woman shook her head. "Moved out years ago. After her dad died, I think. That was 2016, maybe. She was real upset about it. Said she couldn't stay in the apartment without him. Haven't seen her since." "But Mrs. Henderson, she lives in 2A, been here since the 80s. She knew Lillian pretty well. Maybe she knows something." She pointed to a door with a potted plant outside. "Go on, knock. She's usually home this time of day." I thanked her, walked up to apartment 2A, and knocked on the door. A few seconds later, an older woman with white hair and glasses opened it. "Can I help you?" she said, her voice warm. I'm looking for information about Lillian Bennett, who used to live in 4B, I said. The woman on the porch said you knew her, Mrs. Henderson smiled. Oh, Lillian, such a lovely girl. Come in, it's too hot out there. I followed her into a small, cozy apartment filled with family photos and knickknacks. She motioned for me to sit on the couch, then brought me a glass of lemonade. What do you want to know about Lillian? She asked, sitting down across from me. I took a sip of lemonade, trying to figure out how to phrase this. I'm a friend of her ex-husband's, I said, deciding to keep it vague. Jacob Carter. They were married a long time ago, and we're trying to get in touch with her. We need to talk about some legal stuff. Mrs. Henderson's smile faded. Oh, the marriage. That was a sad thing. My heart skipped a beat. Sad. Why? She sighed. Lillian loved that boy, loved him more than anything. But his mom, Margaret, right, she was sick, cancer, and she pressured Lillian into that marriage, said it would make her better. Lillian didn't want to do it. She said she wanted a real wedding, with flowers and a dress, not a courthouse thing. But she loved Jake, so she agreed. This was different from Jake's story. He'd said he was pressured, that he didn't want to do it, but Mrs. Henderson was saying Lillian was the one who'd been pressured. What happened after they got married? I asked. Jake said they got divorced 6 months later, because they weren't in love. Mrs. Henderson snorted. Divorced, honey. I don't think they ever got divorced, at least, Lillian never said anything about it. She moved out after her dad died, but before that, I heard some pretty big fights between her and Jake, screaming matches. Late at night, something about him lying to her. My hands started shaking. What did he lie about? Mrs. Henderson shook her head. I don't know the details, but Lillian was heartbroken. She cried on my shoulder more than once, said she thought Jake loved her, but he only married her for his mom. Then, after her dad died, she just disappeared. Packed her bags and left in the middle of the night. Didn't even say goodbye. Do you have any idea where she went? I asked. A new address, a phone number, a last name, if she got married again. Mrs. Henderson thought for a minute, then said, she mentioned once that her mom lives in Chicago, said she might move there someday, to be closer to her, and I think she had a cousin in Street, Louis, Sarah, maybe. She talked about visiting her sometimes. She stood up, walked to a desk, and pulled out her old address book. Here, she said, flipping to a page. This is her mom's old address in Chicago. I don't know if it's still good, but it's worth a shot. I wrote down the address, 456 Maple Street, Chicago, and thanked her. Do you mind if I ask one more thing? I said. Did Lillian ever talk about a divorce, or mention signing any papers? Mrs. Henderson shook her head. No, dear, not once. Like I said, I don't think they ever got divorced. That boy, Jake, he did her wrong, broke her heart. I hope you're not here to hurt her again. I promised her I wasn't, thanked her again, and walked out of the apartment. The sun was lower in the sky now, and the air felt cooler, but I still felt hot all over. Jake had lied to me about everything. He hadn't been pressured into the marriage. He'd pressured Lillian. He hadn't gotten divorced. He'd broken her heart and let her leave without any closure. And he'd married me, knowing he might still be married to her. I felt sick. I got in my car and texted Sarah. No divorce. Lillian moved to Chicago after her dad died. Have her mom's address. What do I do? She texted back immediately. Come to my house. Now, I'll order pizza, and we'll figure this out. I started the car, but before I could pull away, my phone rang. It was Jake. Hey, babe, he said, his voice cheerful. The kids are passed out in the car. We're on our way home. You wanna order Chinese for dinner? I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. Sure, I said. My voice steady. That sounds good. He hung up, and I stared at my phone. How could he sound so normal, so happy? Like he hadn't destroyed 2 women's lives with his lies. I put the car in drive and headed to Sarah's house. I needed a plan, and I needed to find Lillian, because if Jake wasn't going to tell me the truth, she would. I was sure of it. Sarah's house was a chaotic mess of law books and kid toys. Her 2 boys, 8-year-old Ethan and 5-year-old Noah, were chasing each other around the living room when I walked in. Mom, Auntie's here, Ethan yelled, skidding to a stop in front of me. I knelt down to hug him, my eyes stinging. It was good to be around family, even if my own family was falling apart. Go play in your room, guys, Sarah said, her voice firm but gentle. Auntie and I need to talk. The boys groaned but ran off, yelling about video games. Sarah closed the living room door, then sat down next to me on the couch. Show me the certificate, she said. I pulled it out of my purse, and she studied it carefully, her lawyer face on, brows furrowed, lips pressed tight. This is official, she said, tapping the county seal. No faking that. And you checked Sangamon County for divorce records? I nodded. Dorleen at the clerk's office said there's nothing there. She said they could have gotten divorced in another county or state, but Mrs. Henderson, Lillian's old neighbor, said she never mentioned a divorce, said Lillian just left after her dad died. Sarah sighed, leaning back against the couch. So two possibilities. Either they got divorced somewhere else and Jake's hiding the papers, or they never got divorced at all. If it's the second one, your marriage to Jake is technically void. You're not legally married. My stomach dropped. Void. I'd spent 5 years building a life with Jake. Kids, a house, a mortgage. And we might not even be legally married. It felt like a bad dream. What do? I asked, my voice breaking. Do I confront him again? Hire a private investigator to find Lillian? Go to Chicago and track down her mom? Sarah shook her head. First, we need to verify the divorce status. I can call a friend at the Illinois Department of Public Health. She can run a statewide search for divorce records. If there's nothing there, we'll expand to neighboring states. No sense in running to Chicago without knowing for sure. She grabbed her phone and typed a text, then set it down. She'll get back to me by tomorrow. In the meantime, you need to be careful around Jake. Don't let him see you're suspicious. If he thinks you're onto the divorce thing, he might start covering his tracks more. I nodded, but it was easier said than done. Every time I looked at Jake, I saw the lies, saw Lillian's broken heart, saw my own fake marriage. We ordered pizza, pepperoni, my favorite, and talked for hours. Sarah told me stories about her divorce cases, how people lied and hid things to protect themselves. Jake's not a bad guy, she said, halfway through a slice. He's just a guy who made a mistake and kept making it worse by lying, but that doesn't excuse it. You deserve the truth. I knew she was right, but part of me still clung to the Jake I loved. The guy who brought me coffee in bed, who danced with me in the kitchen, who held me when my grandma died. I left Sarah's house around 8 p.m., promising to call her first thing when her friend got back to her. The drive home was quiet, the streets dark. When I pulled into the driveway, the house was dark except for a light in the kitchen. I walked in, and Jake was sitting at the table, waiting for me. Where were you? He asked, his voice calm but sharp. You said you were getting groceries, then you were gone for hours. Mia asked about you 3 times. I set my purse on the counter, avoiding his eyes. I went to Sarah's. She was having a hard time with the boys. Ethan got in a fight at school, and she needed someone to talk to. It wasn't a total lie. Sarah had mentioned Ethan's fight in passing. Jake nodded, but he didn't look convinced. You should have called. I was worried. I forced a smile. I'm sorry, my phone died. I'll charge it tonight. The kids were already in bed, so we cleaned up the leftover Chinese food in silence. Jake washed the dishes, and I dried them, our hands brushing occasionally. It was the kind of quiet, domestic moment we'd shared 100 times. But now it felt cold, like we were strangers pretending to be married. When we finished, we went to bed, and Jake reached for me, like he always did. I rolled over him. I'm tired, I said. He didn't push it. I lay awake for hours, listening to Jake's breathing. Was he asleep, or was he lying there, thinking about Lillian, about the lies he'd told? Around midnight, I heard him stir. He got out of bed quietly, grabbed his phone, and walked out of the room. I held my breath, then quietly followed him. He was standing on the porch, the screen door closed behind him, his voice low and urgent. I know, he said, but she found the certificate. I had to tell her something. I said we got divorced for Mom. She bought it, I think. My heart raced. He was talking about me. And the other person, was it Lillian? No. I didn't tell her about the divorce papers. I told her they're at Mom's. She hasn't asked again. Pause. I don't know what to do. If she finds out we never got divorced, if she finds you. My hands started shaking. Never got divorced. He was admitting it. To Lillian. I leaned closer, trying to hear the other voice. But it was too quiet. I need time, Jake said. Just give me time. I'll fix this, I promise. He paused again, then said, I'm sorry for everything. I never meant to hurt you. He hung up, leaned against the porch rail, and ran his hand through his hair. I quietly snuck back to bed, my mind racing. He'd never gotten divorced. He was still married to Lillian, and he was still in contact with her. My marriage was a lie. My kids were born out of a fake marriage. I felt like I was going to throw up. I curled up in bed, pulling the covers over my head, and cried silently. How could he do this to me? To our kids? A few minutes later, Jake came back to bed. He lay down next to me, and I could feel his eyes on me. Are you okay? He whispered. I didn't answer. He reached out and touched my shoulder, and I flinched. He pulled his hand back, and I heard him sigh. I know you're mad at me, he said, about the marriage. I get it, but I did it for Mom, and I love you, more than anything. You and the kids are my whole world. It took everything in me not to scream at him, to tell him he was a liar, that he didn't love me. If he did, he wouldn't have lied to me for 5 years, but I didn't. I stayed quiet, because I needed to know more. I needed to know why he was still talking to Lillian. I needed to know if she knew about me, about the kids, and I needed to find her before he did something stupid, like pay her off, or lie to her, or worse. The next morning, I woke up early, before Jake. I grabbed my phone and texted Sarah. He's still married to her. Heard him on the phone with her last night. Admitted they never got divorced. Sarah texted back immediately. Stay calm, my friend just texted. No divorce records in Illinois, Missouri, or Indiana. I'm expanding the search. In the meantime, don't confront him. We need to find Lillian first. I put my phone down, then heard Jake stir. I rolled over. Pretending to be asleep, he got out of bed, grabbed his phone, and went to the bathroom. I heard him make a call. Quiet, urgent. When he came out, he smiled at me. Morning, babe, sleep good. I nodded, sitting up. Yeah, kids up yet? He shook his head. Not yet. I'll make coffee. I watched him walk out of the room, his phone in his hand. He was up to something. I got out of bed, grabbed my purse, and pulled out the piece of paper with Lillian's mom's address in Chicago, 456 Maple Street. It was a 3-hour drive from here. I could go there today, tell her who I was, ask her where Lillian was, but what if she didn't know? What if she didn't care? What if she was on Jake's side? Jake came back with 2 mugs of coffee, handing me one. Here you go, cream and sugar, just how you like it. I took it, my hands shaking. Thanks. He sat down next to me, putting his arm around my shoulders. Listen, I know things have been weird between us since you found the certificate. I want to make it up to you. Let's take the kids to the zoo this weekend. Their favorite. Remember, he was trying to distract me, to make me forget about Lillian, about the fake marriage. But I wasn't going to forget. I smiled at him. That sounds nice. The kids would love that. He kissed my forehead, and I fought the urge to pull away. I love you, he said. I nodded, but I didn't say it back, because I didn't know if I could love him anymore, not after all the lies. Later that day, while Jake was at work and the kids were at school, I called Sarah. I'm going to Chicago, I said. Today. Lillian's mom lives there. I need to find her. Sarah sighed. I knew you'd say that. Be careful. Take my number. Call me if anything happens, and take the marriage certificate with you. Show it to her if you have to. I promised I would. Hung up, and grabbed my keys. I was going to find Lillian, and I was going to get the truth. No more lies, no more secrets. I was halfway to Chicago when my phone rang. It was Jake. My heart dropped. Did he know I was gone? Had the school called, asking why the kids weren't there? I took a deep breath and answered, keeping my voice casual. Hey. Babe, what's up? Just checking in, he said. Forgot my lunch on the counter. Can you drop it off at the office later? And the kid's pediatrician called. Reminder about Luke's checkup tomorrow. Do you want me to take him, or do you want to? I froze. Luke's checkup. I'd totally forgotten. And dropping off his lunch. He was at work, which meant he didn't know I was 3 hours away. I can drop off your lunch, I said, lying through my teeth, and I'll take Luke to the checkup. Don't worry about it, thanks, babe, you're the best, he said. Love you. I mumbled something that sounded like love you too and hung up. My hands were shaking. I couldn't go to Chicago now, not if I had to drop off his lunch and take Luke to the doctor. I pulled off the highway, pulled into a gas station parking lot, and texted Sarah, can't go to Chicago, Jake needs his lunch, Luke has a checkup tomorrow, what do I do? She texted back 5 minutes later. Bring the kids to my house after school, I'll watch them, you can go to Chicago tomorrow morning, leave early, be back by noon, Jake will never know. I smiled. Sarah always had a plan. I started the car, turned around, and headed home. I'd get through today, drop off Jake's lunch, pick up the kids, drop them at Sarah's. And then tomorrow I'd find Lillian. I dropped off Jake's lunch at his office around 1 p.m. His secretary, Linda, smiled at me. He's in a meeting. But I'll give it to him, she said. He's been in a weird mood today, on the phone a lot, pacing. You okay? I forced a smile. Yeah, we're fine, just busy with the kids, thanks, Linda. I hurried out of the office, not wanting to answer any more questions. Jake was on edge, probably worried about me finding Lillian. Good, let him worry. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I picked up the kids from school, dropped them at Sarah's, and went home. Jake got back around 6 p.m., looking tired. Long day, he said, kissing my cheek. Linda said you dropped off my lunch. Thanks, I nodded, stirring the spaghetti sauce. No problem. Kids are at Sarah's. She wanted to have a sleepover with the boys. He raised an eyebrow. Oh, she didn't mention that. Last-minute thing, I said. They were all begging for it. We ate dinner in silence, then watched a movie. Jake fell asleep on the couch halfway through, his head resting on my shoulder. I stared at him, my heart aching. This was the man I loved. The man who snored when he slept, who left his socks on the floor, who remembered my favorite flower was daisies. But he was also a liar, a man who'd married me while still being married to someone else. How could two people exist in the same body? I woke up at 5 a.m. the next morning, quietly got dressed, and grabbed my purse. I left a note on the counter, gone to run errands. Be back by noon. Kids are at Sarah's. I got in the car, started it, and headed to Chicago. The drive was quiet, the roads empty. I had the marriage certificate in my purse, along with Lillian's mom's address, 456 Maple Street. I repeated it to myself, like a mantra, find Lillian, get the truth. I arrived in Chicago around 8 a.m. Maple Street was a quiet, tree-lined street in a suburban neighborhood. 456 Maple was a small, white house with a porch swing and a flower bed full of roses. I parked across the street, took a deep breath, and walked up to the door. I knocked 3 times. My hands shaking. A few seconds later, an older woman with gray hair and a familiar face opened the door. She looked just like Lillian. Same green eyes, same smile. It was her mom. Can I help you? She asked. Her voice warm. I'm looking for Lillian, I said. Lillian Bennett. I think she's your daughter. Her smile faded. Who are you? What do you want with Lillian? I held up the marriage certificate. My name is Emma. I'm married to Jake Carter, your daughter's husband. Her eyes widened. Jake, I haven't heard that name in years. Lillian doesn't talk about him. Can I come in? I asked. I need to talk to her. It's important. About the marriage. They never got divorced. I didn't know until a few days ago. She hesitated, then stepped aside. Come in. Lillian's here. She's visiting for the weekend. But she's been through a lot. Don't hurt her. I nodded. I won't. I just need the truth. She led me into a small living room, where a woman was sitting on the couch, reading a book. When she looked up, I froze. It was Lillian. She was beautiful. Long brown hair, green eyes, a small scar on her cheek that made her look even more real. She stared at me. Her mouth open. Who are you? She asked. Her mom sat down next to her. Honey, this is Emma. She's married to Jake. Lillian's face paled. She stood up, knocking over her coffee mug. It spilled on the carpet, but she didn't notice. Jake, he's married, she said, her voice shaking. He told me. He said he'd never marry anyone else, that he was waiting for me. My heart dropped. He'd lied to her too. We've been married for 5 years, I said. We have 2 kids, a girl, Mia, And a boy, Luke. Lillian sat down, putting her head in her hands. I can't believe this, she said. I haven't talked to him in years, not since I moved here. Then he called me a few days ago, said you found the marriage certificate, that he told you we got divorced. He said he still loved me, that he wanted to fix things. I told him no, I'm engaged, for God's sake, engaged. So Jake had called her, lying to her, telling her he still loved her, even though he was married to me with kids. I felt sick. Why didn't you get divorced? I asked. Jake said you agreed to it, that it was amicable. Lillian laughed, a bitter sound. Amicable? He never filed for divorce. I asked him 100 times. After his mom got better, after my dad died, he always said he'd do it, but he never did. I got tired of waiting. I moved here, changed my last name to my mom's maiden name, Hale, tried to start over. So you're Lillian Hale now, I said. She nodded. Yeah, I didn't want anything to do with him. Or that marriage. I met my fiancé, Mark, 3 years ago. He knows about Jake, about the marriage. But I told him it was over, that we'd gotten divorced. If he finds out we never did, I'll lose him, just like I lost everything with Jake. We talked for hours. Lillian told me her side of the story. How she'd met Jake in college, how they'd fallen in love, how Margaret had pressured her into the marriage. She told me Jake would be devastated if she died without seeing him married, Lillian said. She said he loved me more than anything, that we'd be happy. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe Jake loved me. She told me about the fights, how Jake had pulled away after the marriage, how he'd stopped saying I love you, how he'd spent more time at work than at home. I found out he was talking to his ex-girlfriend, Emily, a few months after we got married. She said, he said it was just friends. But I knew better. Then my dad died, and I couldn't take it anymore. I packed my bags and left. I didn't even say goodbye. I showed her the marriage certificate, and she cried. I thought this was gone, she said, touching the paper. I thought I'd left it all behind. We exchanged phone numbers, promised to stay in touch. We need to get this divorce finalized, she said, for both of us. For your kids, for my fiancé. I nodded. I'll talk to Jake, make him file the papers. I left Lillian's mom's house around 11 a.m., feeling lighter than I had in days. I had the truth. Jake had lied to both of us. Lied about loving Lillian, lied about getting divorced, lied about loving me. But now we knew, now we could fix it. I started the car, turned on the radio, and headed home. I was ready to confront Jake, ready to make him tell the truth, ready to finally get the closure we all deserved. I pulled into the driveway around 2 p.m. Jake's truck was there. I took a deep breath, grabbed my purse, and walked in. He was sitting on the couch, watching TV. When he saw me, he stood up. Where were you? He asked, his voice sharp. You said you'd be back by noon. Sarah called. She said the kids are asking for you. I didn't say anything. I pulled the marriage certificate out of my purse, along with a piece of paper with Lillian's phone number on it. I set them on the coffee table in front of him. I went to Chicago, I said. I met Lillian. She's engaged. Jake, engaged to someone else, and she wants a divorce. Finally, Jake's face paled. He stared at the phone number, then at me. You met her, he said. I nodded. I did. She told me everything, about the pressure from your mom, about the fights, about Emily, about how you never filed for divorce, about how you called her a few days ago, lying to her, telling her you still loved her. He sat down, putting his head in his hands. I'm sorry, he said, his voice breaking. I'm so sorry, Emma. I never meant to hurt you. I never meant to hurt her. I stood there, staring at him. Sorry isn't enough, Jake, not this time. Jake sat there with his head in his hands for what felt like an eternity, the only sound in the room the hum of the TV I'd forgotten to turn off. I stood over him, my arms crossed, waiting for more than just a measly apology. Sorry didn't erase 5 years of lies. Sorry didn't make our marriage legal. Sorry didn't fix the fact that he'd manipulated 2 women into loving him while hiding the truth from both. Finally, he looked up, his eyes red and puffy. I can explain, he said, his voice hoarse. I scoffed, grabbing the remote and turning off the TV. Explain what, Jake? Explain how you called Lillian a few days ago and told her you still loved her. Explain how you let her think you were waiting for her while you were tucking our kids into bed every night. Explain how you never filed for divorce because, what, you liked having a backup plan. He flinched like I'd slapped him. It wasn't like that, he said, standing up. When I called Lillian, I was panicking. You'd found the certificate, and I didn't know what to do, I thought. I thought if I told her I still had feelings for her, she'd keep quiet, that she wouldn't reach out to you. I never meant to hurt her, I never meant to lead her on. But you did, I said, my voice breaking. You hurt her, and you hurt me, you hurt our kids, even if they don't know it yet. Do you realize our marriage isn't even legal, that Mia and Luke were born out of a fake marriage? What happens if something happens to you? What happens to me and the kids? We have no legal rights, Jake. None. His face paled even more. If that was possible, I didn't think about that, he said, sitting back down. I kept putting off the divorce. After Lillian left, I was a mess. Mom was better. But I felt guilty. Guilty for marrying her in the first place. Guilty for driving her away. Then I met you, and you made me forget. You made me feel like I could start over. I didn't want to ruin that by telling you about Lillian. I thought if I never mentioned her, she'd just disappear. She didn't disappear, I said. She was just waiting for you to do the right thing. And you never did. You know what she told me today? She changed her last name to her mom's maiden name. She tried to erase you from her life. And then you called her, and you dragged her back into this mess. She's engaged, Jake. Engaged to a guy who thinks she's divorced. If he finds out the truth, she'll lose him. Just like she lost you. He ran his hand through his hair, a desperate look in his eyes. I'll fix it, he said. I'll call my lawyer first thing Monday morning, file for divorce, make it quick. Lillian can have whatever she wants. She doesn't have to go through a long, messy court battle, and then we can get married, for real this time. I'll plan the wedding you deserve, flowers, dress, everything. Just, please, Emma, don't leave me. My heart ached. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that this was just a stupid mistake, that he could fix it. But I'd heard his lies before. Why should I trust you? I asked. You've lied to me about something this big for 5 years. How do I know you won't lie to me again? How do I know you won't call Lillian next month and tell her you still love her? He walked over to me, reaching for my hands. I let him take them. They were cold and shaking. Because I love you, he said, his eyes locked on mine. I love you more than anything. Lillian was my past, you're my present. You and the kids are my future. I messed up, big time, but I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. I promise. Before I could answer, my phone rang. It was Sarah. I pulled my hands away from Jake and answered it. Hey, I said, I'm home. Talk to Jake. How'd it go? She asked. He says he'll file for divorce on Monday, I said, glancing at Jake. Says we can get married again after. Sarah was quiet for a second. Emma, you need to make sure he follows through. Get it in writing, and don't let him talk you into anything until that divorce is finalized. Got it, I said. I'll call you later. I hung up, then turned back to Jake. Sarah says I need to get it in writing. I said, a promise isn't enough. I want a signed agreement that you'll file for divorce first thing Monday, and until that divorce is final, we're sleeping in separate rooms. No more lies. Jake, no more secrets. He nodded, relief washing over his face. Whatever you want. He said, I'll sign anything. I'll sleep on the couch. Just don't leave me. I sighed. I'm not leaving, not yet, but that doesn't mean everything is okay. We have a lot of work to do, and you need to be honest with me about everything, starting with Emily. Lillian said you were talking to her while you were married to her. Is that true? He winced. Yeah, he said, it's true. Emily and I reconnected after college. She was going through a divorce, and I felt bad for her. We talked on the phone a lot. Nothing physical, I swear. But Lillian found out, and she flipped out. I don't blame her. It was stupid. I stopped talking to her after Lillian left, and you never told me about her. I asked. He shook his head. I didn't want you to think I was the kind of guy who cheats, or who can't let go of his past. I was scared you'd leave me. I stared at him. Jake, if you'd just been honest with me from the start, we wouldn't be in this mess. Honesty is the foundation of a marriage. You can't build something on lies. He nodded. I know, I'm sorry. I'll be honest with you from now on, about everything. We stood there in silence for a minute, then he said, I should go get the couch ready. and I'll write up that agreement tonight. You can read it over before you go to bed. I nodded. Good. That night, Jake slept on the couch. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. Could I really trust him? Could we really fix this? I thought about Mia and Luke, about how much they loved their dad, about how much I loved him. I wanted our family to stay together, but I couldn't do it if he kept lying to me. Around midnight, there was a knock on my bedroom door. Emma, Jake said, his voice quiet. Can I come in? I sighed. Yeah. He opened the door, holding a piece of paper. I wrote up the agreement, he said, handing it to me. I'll file for divorce on Monday. I'll pay all the legal fees. And I won't contact Lillian unless it's about the divorce. I signed it. I read it over. It was simple, but it covered everything I'd asked for. His signature was at the bottom, scrawled in his messy handwriting. Okay, I said, handing it back to him. Keep it. I'll check in with you on Monday. He nodded. Then stood there for a minute, like he wanted to say something else. I love you, he said finally. I didn't answer. He sighed, then turned and walked out of the room. The next morning, I picked up the kids from Sarah's. Mia ran to me, hugging my legs. Mommy, I missed you, she said. Luke followed, clinging to my hand. Where's Daddy? He asked. He's at home, I said, forcing a smile. Let's go see him. When we got home, Jake was making pancakes, Mia's favorite. He smiled when he saw us. Hey, kids, come get your pancakes, extra syrup. Mia and Luke ran to the table, chattering excitedly. Jake winked at me. I thought we could have a family breakfast, he said. I nodded, sitting down next to Mia. We ate in silence for a minute. Then Luke said, Daddy, why did you sleep on the couch last night? Jake froze. Because Mommy was tired, and I didn't want to wake her up, he said. Luke nodded, accepting the lie. Mia, though, looked at me. Are you and Daddy fighting? She asked. Her voice was quiet, and her eyes were wide. My heart broke. No, baby, I said, reaching over and squeezing her hand. We're not fighting. Daddy just had a bad dream, and he didn't want to wake me up. That's all. She nodded, but I could tell she didn't believe me. Kids always know when something's wrong. After breakfast, Jake took the kids to the park. I stayed home, cleaning the kitchen. When my phone rang, it was Lillian. Hey, she said, I just wanted to check in. Did you talk to Jake? Yeah, I said. He says he'll file for divorce on Monday. I have a signed agreement. Lillian sighed. Good. I talked to Mark last night. I told him everything. About the marriage, about Jake, about the fact that we never got divorced. He was upset, but he said he loves me, and he'll stand by me. We're going to get through this together. I smiled. I'm glad, I said. You deserve happiness, Lillian. After everything you've been through, you too, she said. If Jake messes up, if he doesn't file on Monday, call me. We'll handle it together. Okay, I promised I would. Hung up, and felt a little better. At least Lillian and I were on the same page. We were both fighting for the truth, for closure, for the lives we deserved. When Jake and the kids got home, Mia ran to me. Mommy. Daddy pushed me on the swing so high I almost touched the sky, she said. Luke nodded, bouncing up and down. Me too, me too. Jake smiled at me, and for a second, everything felt normal. Like we were just a regular family, no lies, no secrets. But I knew better. The divorce hadn't been filed yet, the marriage wasn't legal yet, and trust was something we'd have to build back, one honest day at a time. Monday morning came way too fast. I woke up at 6 a.m. Even though the kids didn't have school until 8, and lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Was Jake really going to file for divorce today? Or was this just another lie? I grabbed my phone and texted Lillian. Today's the day. I'll let you know when he confirms he filed. She texted back immediately. Thanks, I'm on pins and needles over here. Mark's at work, but I keep waiting for him to call and say something's wrong. I got up, showered, and made coffee. Jake was already up, sitting at the kitchen table in his suit, staring at his phone. Morning, he said, looking up. Coffee's good. I nodded, pouring myself a cup. Did you call your lawyer? He hesitated, then said, yeah. I have an appointment at 10 a.m. He said he can file the papers today, but Lillian has to sign them too. I'll email her a copy as soon as it's done. Good, I said, taking a sip of coffee. I'll tell her to look for it." The kids wandered in a few minutes later, still half asleep. Mia rubbed her eyes. "Mommy, can I have cereal?" Luke nodded, repeating, "Cereal, cereal." I got them bowls of their favorite. Fruit Loops for Mia, Cheerios for Luke, and watched as they ate, my mind racing. What if Lillian refused to sign? What if there was a delay? What if Jake was lying about the appointment? Jake left for work at 8:30, kissing the kids goodbye and squeezing my hand. "I'll call you after the appointment," he said. "Promise?" I nodded, but I didn't say anything. I didn't trust his promises anymore. After he left, I got the kids ready for school, dropped them off, and headed home. I spent the next hour pacing the living room, checking my phone every 2 minutes. At 10:30, it rang. It was Jake. "It's done," he said, his voice relieved. "I filed the divorce papers. The lawyer emailed a copy to Lillian. She just needs to sign and return them. Then it goes to the judge. He said it should be finalized in 30 days, tops." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "Really?" "Yeah," he said. "I can send you a copy of the filing if you want, just to prove it." "Please," I said. 10 minutes later, an email popped up in my inbox, from Jake's lawyer, with a copy of the divorce petition attached. It was real. He'd actually done it. I texted Lillian immediately. "He filed. Lawyer emailed you the papers. 30 days to finalize." She texted back 5 minutes later. "Just got them. I'll sign and send them back today. Mark's taking me to dinner tonight to celebrate. We're putting this behind us." I smiled. Finally, some good news. That afternoon, Lillian called me. I signed the papers and sent them back. She said, "Lawyer confirmed he got them. We're good to go, but can we talk in person? I want to tell you everything, not just the basics. Everything. I think you deserve to know, and I think it might help me closure." I hesitated. Did I really want to hear more? Did I want to relive Jake's lies all over again? But she was right. I deserved the whole truth. "Sure," I said. "Where do you want to meet?" We decided on a little cafe in downtown Springfield, halfway between my house and Chicago. I got there early, ordered a latte, and sat at a booth by the window. My hands were shaking. I didn't know what to expect. Would she hate me? Would she blame me for marrying Jake? Or would she be understanding? She walked in 15 minutes later, wearing a blue dress and a smile. She looked happy, lighter, like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. "Hey," she said, sitting down across from me. "Thanks for meeting me. Thanks for coming." I said, "Can I get you a drink?" She nodded. "A cappuccino, please." I waved down the waiter, ordered her drink, then turned back to her. "So, everything." She took a deep breath. "Let's start from the beginning. I met Jake my freshman year of college. He was a senior, working as a TA for my math class. I was terrible at math. Like, really terrible. He stayed after class to help me. And we started talking. He was funny, sweet, smart. I fell for him hard. We dated for 2 years. All through my sophomore and junior years, he took me to my first formal. Met my parents, even talked about moving in together after I graduated. Then his mom got sick," I said. She nodded. "Yeah, it was right after I graduated. She was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. Jake was a mess. He'd just started his new job, and he was trying to take care of her at the same time. I tried to help, cooked dinners, took her to appointments, cleaned her house. Margaret loved me. She kept saying how lucky Jake was to have me. Then one day, she pulled me aside and said she didn't think she'd make it to see Jake married. She begged me to marry him, just for her. She said it would give her something to fight for. Jake said she pressured him too." I said. Lillian laughed. "She probably did. But Jake, he wanted to do it, not just for his mom. For himself. He was scared of losing her, and he thought marriage would make everything better, like it would fix his mom's cancer, fix his own fear. I told him I didn't want to get married just for her. I wanted a real wedding, with my family there, with us both ready. But he begged me. He said, 'I love you 100 times. He said we'd have a real wedding later, when his mom was better.' I believed him. So you got married at the courthouse," I said. She nodded. "October 12th, 2015. Just us, Margaret, and my dad. My mom didn't even know. She would have flipped out. We went back to Margaret's house after, had cake and coffee. Margaret was so happy. She cried. She said she knew we'd be together forever. Jake held my hand and smiled, but I could tell something was off, like he was already regretting it. What happened after that? I asked. She sighed. Everything fell apart. Margaret started feeling better. Chemo worked, and the doctors said she was in remission. But Jake didn't want to talk about a real wedding. He stopped saying I love you. He stayed late at work every night. Then I found his phone one day. He was texting Emily, his high school girlfriend. She'd just gotten divorced. And he was comforting her, telling her she was the one that got away. My stomach dropped. Jake had told me it was just friendly, but that sounded more than friendly. Did he cheat on you? I asked. She shook her head. Not physically, I don't think, but emotionally, yeah. He was pouring his heart out to her, while I was at home, waiting for him to come back to me. I confronted him about it, and he flipped out. He said I was being jealous, that Emily was just a friend. But I knew better. I knew he didn't love me anymore. Then your dad died, I said. She nodded, her eyes filling with tears. He had a heart attack, out of nowhere. I was devastated. Jake was there for the funeral, but he was distant, like he didn't know how to comfort me. I asked him again about the divorce, said I couldn't stay married to him if he didn't love me. He said he'd file, but he never did. I waited for 6 months, 6 months of him making excuses, of me crying myself to sleep, of Margaret asking why we weren't trying to have kids. So you left, I said, in the middle of the night. She smiled, a sad smile. I packed a suitcase, took all my dad's photos, and drove to Chicago. I didn't leave a note, I didn't answer his calls. I changed my number, changed my last name. I wanted to erase him, and for a while, I did. I got a job as a teacher, made new friends, met Mark. His everything. Jake wasn't kind, honest, present. He loves me for who I am, not for who he wants me to be. Then Jake called you a few weeks ago, I said. She nodded. I didn't recognize his number at first. When I answered, I froze. He sounded desperate. He said you'd found the marriage certificate, that he'd told you we got divorced. He said he still loved me, that he'd made a mistake, that he wanted to leave you and be with me. I told him no. I told him I was engaged, that I was happy, but he kept begging. It took everything in me to hang up on him. I reached across the table and took her hand. I'm sorry, I said. I'm sorry he did that to you. I'm sorry he dragged you back into this. She squeezed my hand. It's not your fault. None of this is your fault. You were just as much a victim of his lies as I was. But now it's over. The divorce will be final in 30 days. We can both move on. You can marry Jake for real, if you want to, and I can marry Mark, knowing everything is legal. Do you think he'll change? I asked. Jake. Do you think he'll stop lying, stop running from his mistakes? She thought for a minute. I don't know, she said. He's always been scared of confrontation, scared of hurting people. But he hurts them more by lying. He needs to learn that honesty, even when it's hard, is better than keeping secrets. But that's up to him. And it's up to you to decide if you're willing to wait for him to learn that. We talked for another hour. About the kids, about Mark, about our jobs. She told me about her classroom. About the little girl who just learned to read. About the boy who brought her a dandelion every morning. She sounded happy, truly happy, and for the first time in weeks. I felt hopeful. Maybe we could both have the lives we deserved. When we left the cafe, she hugged me. Call me if you need anything, she said, and if Jake ever contacts me again, I'll tell you right away. I nodded. Same to you. Good luck with Mark. You two deserve the best. She smiled. Thanks, you too. I got in my car and headed home, the weight of the past few weeks lifting off my shoulders. The truth was out. The divorce was filed, and for the first time, I felt like I could breathe. But I still had a decision to make. Did I want to marry Jake again? Did I want to spend the rest of my life with a man who'd lied to me for 5 years, or was it time to walk away? When I got home, Jake was already there. He was sitting on the couch, holding a bouquet of daisies. My favorite. I wanted to surprise you, he said, standing up. I know it's not much, but I wanted to say thank you for giving me a second chance. I took the flowers, smelling them. They were beautiful. Lillian and I met today, I said. He froze. Oh, did she say anything bad about me? No, I said. She told me the truth, about college, about your mom, about Emily. about leaving. She said she's happy now, that she's ready to move on. He let out a breath. I'm glad. I never wanted to ruin her life. I messed up. So bad. I sat down on the couch, and he sat next to me. Jake, I need to think, I said, about us, about getting married again. I need time. He nodded. I understand. Take all the time you need. I'll be here, proving to you that I can be better. I looked at him, and for a second, I saw the boy he'd been in college. The sweet, funny TA who'd helped Lillian with math, the boy who'd fallen in love and made a mistake, the man who loved our kids more than anything. Maybe he could change. Maybe we could fix this. But only time would tell. The 30 days dragged by slower than molasses in winter. Every morning, I'd wake up and check my email, half expecting a message from Jake's lawyer saying something had gone wrong. Lillian had changed her mind, the judge had denied the petition, Jake had backed out, but every day, it was quiet. No bad news, but no real good news either, just the slow, steady tick of the clock as we waited for the divorce to be final. Jake spent those 30 days trying, really trying. He came home from work on time every night, helped with the kids' homework, cooked dinner at least 3 times a week. He stopped hiding his phone from me, left it on the kitchen counter, unlocked, like he was proving he had nothing to hide. He took Mia to her ballet recital and Luke to his first t-ball game. Cheering louder than anyone else in the crowd, he even started going to therapy, something he'd always refused to do before. I want to understand why I lie, he told me one night, his voice quiet. Why I'm so scared to tell the truth. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to wrap my arms around him and say, let's get married tomorrow. But Lillian's words kept playing in my head. He needs to learn that honesty, even when it's hard, is better than keeping secrets, but that's up to him. And it's up to you to decide if you're willing to wait for him to learn that. Was 30 days enough for someone to change? Was a few weeks of good behavior enough to erase 5 years of lies? Sarah kept asking me what I was going to do. You can't stay in limbo forever, she said over lunch one day. Either you forgive him and marry him, or you walk away. The kids need stability, Emma. They need to know their family is going to be okay. She was right. Mia had stopped asking if we were fighting. But she still clung to me a little tighter at bedtime. Luke started having nightmares, waking up screaming, "Daddy, don't go," and I knew it was because he could sense the tension, even if he didn't understand it. On the 30th day, the email came, from Jake's lawyer, divorce finalized, judge signed off this morning. Copies attached for both parties. I stared at the screen for a minute, then forwarded it to Lillian. She texted back 2 minutes later, "Thank God. Mark and I are picking a wedding date next week. You okay?" I typed back, "I'm okay, just thinking." Jake came home that night with a cake, vanilla, my favorite, and a small box. He set them on the kitchen counter, then knelt down in front of the kids, who were coloring at the table. "Guess what?" he said, grinning. "We have good news. Daddy's divorce is final, which means Mommy and I can get married, for real this time." Mia's eyes widened. A wedding, with a dress and flowers and cake. Luke clapped his hands. Cake, cake. I stood there, watching them, my heart aching. This was what I'd wanted. For our family to be legal, to be whole, but why did I feel so scared? Jake stood up and walked over to me, holding the small box. "I know I don't deserve this," he said, opening the box. Inside was a simple silver ring with a small diamond. Nothing flashy, nothing expensive, but I want to ask you properly, Emma, will you marry me? For real, no lies, no secrets, just us, and the kids. Mia and Luke yelled, say yes, but I couldn't speak. I looked at Jake. His eyes were red, his hands shaking, and I saw everything. The boy who'd married Lillian to make his mom happy, the man who'd lied to me for 5 years, the father who cheered at t-ball games and read bedtime stories, the husband who was trying every day to be better. I thought about Lillian, happy and engaged, starting a new life. I thought about Sarah, telling me to choose stability for the kids. I thought about the kids themselves, screaming for me to say yes, and then I thought about myself. What did I want? I wanted honesty. I wanted trust. I wanted a partner who would tell me when he was scared, when he'd made a mistake. Instead of hiding it, I wanted to stop looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next lie. But did I want to give up on the man I loved? on the family we'd built. I need more time, I said, my voice quiet. Mia's smile faded. Luke stopped clapping. Jake's face fell. But he nodded. Okay, he said, I understand. Take all the time you need, I'll wait. He closed the box and put it in his pocket, then turned to the kids. How about we eat cake anyway? To celebrate Daddy's divorce being final, and to celebrate our family, no matter what. Mia and Luke cheered again. And Jake cut the cake, his hands still shaking. That night, after the kids were in bed, I sat on the porch swing, staring at the stars. Jake came out and sat next to me, handing me a glass of wine. I know it's hard, he said. I know I have a lot to prove, but I'm not going anywhere. I love you. I love this family, and I'll spend the rest of my life proving that to you. Tell me about the day you married Lillian, I said. He froze. What? Tell me about it. The whole truth. No lies, no excuses. He took a deep breath. It was cold, October 12th, 2015. The courthouse was crowded. Mom was in a wheelchair. She was still weak from chemo. Your dad, he was quiet. He didn't want me to do it. He pulled me aside before we went in and said, don't do this for her. Do it for you. But I didn't listen. I thought I was being selfless. I thought I was saving Mom. But I was just being scared. Scared of losing her. Scared of being alone. And after the ceremony, we went to Mom's house. She made chocolate cake. Lillian's favorite. Lillian tried to smile. But I could tell she was hurt. She kept saying we can have a real wedding later, right? And I said of course. But I didn't mean it. I knew I'd made a mistake. I knew I didn't love her the way she loved me. And then Mom got better, and I didn't have an excuse anymore. So I pulled away. I stayed late at work. I texted Emily. I did everything I could to avoid the truth, and when she left, I was relieved, at first. Then I was devastated. I went to her apartment, but she was gone. Her dad's photos were gone. Everything was gone. I called her 100 times, but she never answered. I felt like I'd lost a part of myself. Then I met you, and you made me forget. You made me feel like I could be a good person, a good husband, but I was too scared to tell you the truth. I thought if I did, you'd leave me, and I couldn't lose you too. I looked at him, and for the first time in months, I didn't see a liar. I saw a man who'd been broken, who'd made terrible mistakes, but who was finally telling the truth, the whole truth. No excuses, no justifications, just honesty. I'll marry you, I said. His head snapped up. Really? I nodded. But not yet. I want to wait. 6 months. We'll go to couples therapy together. You'll keep going to your own therapy. We'll be honest with each other. Even when it's hard, even when it hurts, and if, in 6 months, we still trust each other, we'll get married. For real. He reached for my hand, and I let him. I'll do anything. He said, anything you want. I'll go to therapy every day. I'll tell you every thought in my head. I'll wait forever. I smiled. You don't have to wait forever. Just 6 months. 6 months later, we got married in our backyard. It was small. Just Sarah and her family, Lillian and Mark, a few close friends. Mia was my maid of honor, wearing a pink dress and carrying a bouquet of daisies. Luke was the ring bearer, carrying the ring on a pillow he'd decorated with glitter. Jake cried when he saw me, just like he did at the fake wedding. But this time, his tears were real. I love you, he said, slipping the ring on my finger. No lies, no secrets, just us. Lillian came up to me after the ceremony, giving me a hug. You look happy, she said. I am, I said. You too, she smiled, holding Mark's hand. We're getting married next month, on the beach. I hugged her again. Congratulations, you deserve it. That night, after the guests had left, Jake and I sat on the porch swing, watching the kids sleep through the window. I never thought we'd get here, he said, squeezing my hand. Me neither, I said, but we did, because we were honest, even when it was hard. He kissed me. And for the first time in years, I felt safe, I felt loved, I felt like our family was whole. Mistakes don't define us, lies don't have to break us. What defines us is how we fix our mistakes, how we choose honesty over fear, love over pride, and sometimes, the hardest choice, giving someone a second chance, is the one that leads to the happiest ending. Alright, that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed this video, Please subscribe, we'll keep updating with more exciting stories. And we look forward to seeing you next time.